Albert Fish. The Gray Man. Confirmed deaths 3. Estimated body count, between 9 and 100 plus. Albert Fish was an American serial killer, intimate offender, child predator and cannibal who was active between the years 1924 and 1932. He was also known as the Gray Man, the Werewolf of Wysteria, the Brooklyn Vampire, the Moon Maniac, and the Boogeyman. Albert Fish is often regarded as one of the most depraved and notorious serial killers in American history, committing crimes that shocked and horrified the public in the early 20th century. Known for his brutal murders, cannibalism, and sadistic tendencies, Fish's crimes went beyond murder. They revealed a deeply disturbed mind and ignited debates on criminal insanity, morality, and the human psyche. Fish was the youngest of 4 children in a family with a history of mental illness. His mother reportedly suffered from hallucinations, and other relatives battled schizophrenia and other severe mental health issues. His early life was marked by poverty and hardship, worsened by the death of his father in 1875. Unable to care for him, his mother placed him in an orphanage, a move that would later profoundly affect his psychological development. During his time at the orphanage, Fish was exposed to physical abuse, which reportedly triggered a fascination with pain. This abusive environment nurtured his sadomasochistic tendencies and instilled in him a complex association between pain and pleasure. As he grew older, Fish's behavior became increasingly alarming. He developed bizarre intimate fetishes and a tendency for self-harm, including inserting needles into his body, an act he found both painful and pleasurable. His interest in inflicting pain on himself eventually extended to others. By his 20s, Fish had begun acting on these urges, leading to a string of criminal acts against children, which he would escalate over the years. Fish believed he received instructions from a divine presence to act on his violent inclinations, marking the beginnings of a pattern that would soon spiral into horrific acts of murder and cannibalism. Infamous crimes and victims. Albert Fish's most infamous murders occurred between 1924 and 1928, with a confirmed count of at least 3 child victims: Frances McDonnell, Billy Gaffney, and Grace Budd. Fish's crimes were marked by cruelty and ritualistic elements that made his actions particularly disturbing to the public. Frances McDonnell. In 1924, Fish encountered 8-year-old Frances McDonnell, whom he lured into a secluded area in Staten Island, New York. Witnesses reported seeing an old man with a gray beard in the vicinity before McDonnell's lifeless body was discovered. He had been strangled, assaulted, and mutilated. This was Fish's first known murder, but it would not be his last. Billy Gaffney. In 1927, 4-year-old Billy Gaffney disappeared while playing with a friend. The friend described the abductor as the Boogeyman, later identified as Fish. Fish confessed to torturing and cannibalizing Gaffney, recounting the events in disturbing detail. He admitted to taking the boy to an abandoned house, where he subjected him to unthinkable pain before finally ending his life. Grace Budd. The murder of Grace Budd is perhaps the most notorious of Fish's crimes. In 1928, he posed as Frank Howard, a farmer offering work to Grace's brother Edward, who was supposed to be his next victim. Instead, Fish's attention shifted to 10-year-old Grace. Fish convinced her parents to let him take Grace to a supposed birthday party of her niece, but instead, he took her to an abandoned property where he unlived and cannibalized her. In a letter sent to the Budd family years later, Fish described with gruesome detail what he had done to the child. This letter ultimately led to his capture, as police traced it back to him, bringing an end to his spree. Capture and trial. The letter Albert Fish sent to the Budd family contained a stamp that was traced back to his residency. Detective William King waited outside the guest house he was staying in until he returned. When confronted, Fish initially agreed to accompany the detective to police headquarters but then brandished a razor blade. King swiftly disarmed Fish and took him into custody. Once at the police station, Fish freely admitted to having unlived Grace Budd. Fish was put on trial with 3 counts of murder and grand larceny. During his trial, Fish shocked both the public and professionals with his unrepentant descriptions of his crimes. He claimed that he was compelled by visions and a belief that God had directed him to harm children, highlighting the profound and unsettling depth of his psychosis. The trial raised serious questions about his sanity and his criminal responsibility. Psychiatric experts examined Fish, diagnosing him with a range of mental disorders, including sadism, masochism, and schizophrenia. Despite this, the court deemed him legally sane, capable of understanding the nature and consequences of his actions. Fish's case stands as one of the earliest instances where forensic psychology was utilized to understand the motivations and psychological state of a serial killer. His defense attorney pleaded insanity, noting Fish's religious delusions and self-harming behavior as evidence of his mental instability. However, the prosecution argued that his premeditated actions demonstrated clear criminal intent, which ultimately swayed the jury to convict him. In March 1935, Fish was sentenced to death. His appeals were denied, and he was executed by electric chair on January 16, 1936. Fish reportedly faced his execution with a calm demeanor, a testament to his complete detachment from the weight of his crimes. Interesting facts regarding Albert Fish's case. 1. As an adolescent, he spent many hours in public baths to watch other boys undress. 2. At the age of 12, he started a relationship with a boy who introduced him to consuming human waste. 3. Throughout his life, he used to write obscene letters to women whose names and addresses he acquired from classified advertising and matrimonial agencies. 4. Although he was married with 6 children, he remarried another woman. This second marriage lasted only a week. 5. He became obsessed with mutilation after a lover took him to a wax museum, and he saw a bisection of a human penis. 6. In 1910, Fish started a sadomasochistic relationship with a mentally disabled boy of 19 years of age. Fish tortured his lover for 2 weeks straight, and before letting him go, he cut off half of his genitalia. 7. In 1917, he began having hallucinations. He once wrapped himself in a carpet, saying that he was following the instructions of John the Apostle. Then he began indulging in self-harm. He embedded needles into his groin and abdomen. After his arrest, X-rays revealed he had at least 29 needles lodged in his pelvic region. He also hit himself with a nail-studded paddle and inserted wool doused with lighter fluid into his anal cavity and set it alight. 8. After his divorce, Fish raised his children as a single parent. Although there are no reports that he ever abused his children, he did ask his children to paddle his buttocks with a nail-studded paddle. 9. In 1919, he stabbed a mentally disabled boy in Georgetown. He said he would attack disabled people and people of color because they would not be missed when killed. 10. His killing kit, which he defined as implements of hell, were a meat cleaver, a butcher knife, and a small hand saw. 11. In 1924, Fish tried to abduct a girl from a farm on Staten Island, in the state of New York, but the mother of the child chased him away. He returned that same night to the same house, trying to sneak into the house. This time it was the father of the child who forced him to leave. 12. According to Fish, he was just following the commands of God, who had told him to mutilate and abuse the children intimately. 13. Once he took 2 boys to his apartment to unlive them. While the boys were playing in the room, he procured his implements of hell, but when the boys saw the knife, they became frightened and ran away. 14. In 1930, he was arrested for having sent an obscene letter to a woman advertising for a maid. 15. Fish's last words were, "I don't even know why I'm here." 16. His final statement was never revealed as intended. Fish wrote his final words in a letter to be read to the press after his passing, but the letter was plagued with so many obscenities the lawyer refused to read it out loud. 17. 2 of his nicknames, the Gray Man and the Boogeyman, were attributed to him by children. These children, who saw Fish talking to his victims, used these names to describe him to the authorities. Legacy. The case of Albert Fish remains a significant and dark milestone in criminal psychology and forensic science. His depravity and lack of remorse forced society to confront the limits of criminal law and psychological assessment at the time. Fish's crimes highlighted the need for improved methods to identify and contain individuals with severe psychopathic tendencies. His case became a subject of fascination for criminologists, psychologists, and the media, providing a profound, if deeply unsettling, example of extreme criminal pathology.